Okay, so so let's recap where we've been before today. So right now we're going to start from chapter 2. This is Shar Aleph, the right Chelik Aleph, the first part, chapter 2. So the first chapter of the first part talked about um, the six things one must know about the nature of God, right? The six things. And I think and we had a question. We didn't know exactly why these six. Why is it important for you to know? What if you don't know? So I think as we're gonna go along, as what I was saying, if that time, that as we go along in the book, we will see that those things are going to be playing a role in the rest. Like these axioms upon which other things are going to be built. Okay, so we're going to see that. So that was the six things of that one must know about God. And again, what were the six things? The six things that, well, there's the fact that He exists. There's an infinite Creator that exists. Sorry, there's that infinite Creator is also perfect, right? Then His existence is imperative. It's necessity. It's absolute. Okay, He's also absolutely independent. That was number 4. Number 5, that this perfection of His is absolutely perfect and one with His essence. And number 6, His oneness and unity. Yeah, good. So those are the 6 things. Then he told us the second chapter talked about the purpose of creation. What is the purpose of creation, right? So the only way for us to understand the purpose of creation, that it's a pure act of kindness. Okay, it's a pure act of kindness, that one of the elements of perfection is to be good. Okay, and so God wanted to be good, and I mean He is good, and He wanted to be completely good. He wanted to express that good, right? So even though again that's a limitation, right? If God needed to express His good, that's a limitation. So it's a limitation that He self-imposed upon Himself to express His goodness. So He needed a recipient. So He created a recipient in order to allow Himself to express His complete good. Good. That's the basic idea of why creation was made, right? For God to express His goodness onto another being. Okay. Now He wanted to, in order to express good, He wanted to express the highest good possible. Good. What's the highest good possible? What is the best good that God could have bestowed onto another? The answer is infinity. What is that infinity? That's God Himself. So the best good that God could have bestowed on another being would be to allow that being to reconnect, right? To be created, which is to separate from Himself, and to reconnect still as an independent external entity, to reconnect with the infinity of God. Okay, so allowing that creation to connect. That's the dvekus, right? Lidovik, to cling, to reconnect with God. That is the ultimate good that God could have bestowed. Good. The next part says that there's a flaw in the plan, so to speak. There's a flaw in the plan, because it's not a flaw. I mean, you can ask the question, why? So why didn't just God create that being and bestow that goodness? Done, right? So the answer is, one second, the way to achieve that connection between that being and God is to imitate, to be like God. In order to achieve that closeness, you have to be similar, right? You have to be similar. One of the things that we learned in the first chapter is there is an independence. God has independence. He's not dependent on any other creature, right? Here, God is creating another creature that is completely dependent on God. And everything that good that He's bestowing upon him is completely dependent on God. So that already sets him apart from God. So that is a challenge, right? That's a barrier for this creation to be able to cling back to God, because it's missing that element of perfection. So here's a solution to the problem. How do we give this element of perfection, of independence, right, to this new creation? The answer is, let him be the master, let him acquire it, let him earn it, let him build it on his own, and that will allow him to be the creator of that perfection. Right? So the purpose of, so since God is perfect, the creation is not perfect. By allowing that creation to acquire elements of perfection, even though he'll never reach perfection, but as long as he's in the process of acquisition of elements of perfection, he is then, opens the door to connect back with God by also becoming an independent forger of his elements of perfection. That's it, right? That's, I believe, what we did until now. So it's right. And the last thing we did was that, obviously, if that's the system, so there has to be in existence various elements. There have to exist elements of perfection, and there have to exist elements of lacking, of imperfection, things that will pull them up and things that will pull them down. Otherwise, the system doesn't work. Good. So now we're up to Gimel. Okay. V'amnam. However, milvad heyois habriya hazois. Besides that, this creation, meaning this being, right, shekonso hashlemus, which acquired perfection, and as such, ru'uyo ledavik b'boira'ah, Yisbarach Shmoi, has become worthy to cling and to connect with its creator. Mitzad his damusoloi, because it became similar to him. Right? So again, the clearly it's the way to acquire, to connect back with God is becoming similar to God. Right? Until now, you could have thought that perfection, meaning you could have thought God says, listen, I want you to be the owner of your good, so I'll give you a chance to earn it. How do I earn it? I don't know. Jump 3 times, I'll give it to you. Right? And so there wasn't jump 3 times, says I'll give you a chance to become perfect. Okay, you'll become perfect, you're in the club. You don't become perfect, you're not in the club. Right? So if you become perfect, you're in the club. But besides that, he's saying, Hine al yidei knoiso hashleimus lo nimtza mizdabekas v'halechas bo. It's not like that. It's the process of acquiring perfection that creates this connection, right? It's not that, there is here's level 100, right? If you unlock level 100, you get into Olam Haba, you got your connection. No, that's not what it is. It's the actual process, each step of the way of becoming more perfect. It keeps on connecting you closer and closer to God and opening those doors for you, right? So hine al yidei knoiso hashlemus, through the act of acquisition of that perfection, nimtzes, then this creature, this new creation, mizdabekas v'halechas bo, continues to cling to the Creator. Atchasoif knoiso hashlemus, so that by the end that it has acquired this perfection, v'imotzo mizdabekas bo hakol inyan echad, and the acquisition of perfection and the attachment to God, they're coming together. It's not that there is a reward for you've earned perfection. Okay, here's your reward. No, it's one and the same. The process of becoming perfect is the thing that unlocks this ability to connect with God. It's all one thing. V'zeh, and this is ki beyois mitziyusoi. Since God is this ultimate perfection, right? God Himself is ultimate perfection. Like we said in the first chapter, so then any perfection, any element of perfection that exists, it can only be as an extension of Him. Any perfection that exists is basically an extension of godliness. Ke'anaf el hashoirish, as if it exists as a branch coming out from a root. Okay? So any element of perfection is an extension of God's perfection. Okay? Ki afal pi she'ena magia el hashleimus hasharashi. Now, even though he said before that God's perfection is nothing like any other perfection, and all the other perfection is just a poor excuse for perfection, right? But still, so even though eina magia el hashleimus hasharashi, it can never reach the root perfection, which is God's, but still, hine hemshech v'toiloda mimenahu. Still, we can look at it as an extension and a subcat, not a subcategory, but let's see, they don't translate it very well, but it's a hemshech, it's an extension with teloda. I don't know how to translate it teloda. It's a result. There you go, the result of it. Okay, it's an extension and a result of it. V'hine tireh, and so you see ki hashleimus ha'amiti, that the true perfection, hine hu mitziyuso yisbarach shmoi, that's God's essence. V'chol chisaron, so there any kind of lacking, any kind of missing, any kind of imperfection, so to speak, eina ela halem tuvoy yisbarach shmoi. That's only a hiding of God's goodness. So any imperfection that exists, that is in essence a distortion, right? It's God's missing, God's presence being concealed. So elements of perfection are things that are an extension of His essence. Elements of imperfection are things that are a concealment of that essence. Shmoi v'hester ponav, and the hiding of His face. V'nimtza, so then comes out shehaoras ponav, that the lighting up of His face, or the revealing of His face, is Baruch Shmoi v'kirvasoi, and His closeness. Tia hashoyresh will become the root, v'hasiba, and the cause, l'chol shleimus shetiya, to any perfection that exists. V'hester panav, and the concealment of His face. Hashoyresh is the root, v'hasiba, and the cause, l'chol achisaron, and for any missing, any imperfection. Asher keshir hahester, to the degree of concealment, kach yashir achisaron, so too will be the measure of the lacking, hanimshach memenu, that will result from him, from it. Okay? So probably, I'm not an expert in the field, but assuming this already refers to this idea of called tzimtzum, right? There is this idea that God somehow withdrew Himself in order to make room for the world, whatever that means. I don't know what God. Is it possible for God to withdraw Himself? Is it real? Is it just like Nefesh HaChaim says? It's only to a certain perspective. We don't know exactly what this means, but basically there is this yin yang of creation, right? There is the ha'oras ponav. There is the lighting up of His face, right? The revelation of God, and that is apparent through any elements of perfection. Any elements of perfection that we see are like God's signature, an extension of God, and any elements of imperfection is comes from God's concealment. Good? Mm-hmm. All right. Okay. So Valkane, if so, that the entire creation, or the platform for the creation, is divided between elements of perfection and elements of imperfection, Valkane, therefore, Hanivra Hazeh, this creation upon whom God is supposed to bestow this goodness, Ha'oimed b'shikul, stands b'shikul, in perfect balance, bein hashleimus, between perfection, v'achisroinois, and the imperfections. It's very interesting, just the language, there are many interesting languages, and we can't pick up every single, again, the language is incredibly precise. I can't even begin to start digging into it, but just this one I'll point out, right? So it says perfection is shleimus, mm-hmm. Perfection, one, singular, mm-hmm. Right? Lackings is v'achisroinois, is many, right? Chesroinois, mm-hmm. Many imperfections, right? So why is that? Why it should say perfections and imperfections, or perfection and imperfection, mm-hmm. Right? But perfection is one, and imperfections, there are many, right? So it's like that line from Anna Karenina that I like to quote because it's the only one that anybody knows, or that I know. It's the first line from the book, right? Help me out again. So every happy family is the same, but every unhappy family is unhappy for its own reason, right? In its own different way, right? So basically, perfection is one. There's one perfection. There can't really be many perfections. But imperfections, can be, in so many different ways, you can step away from perfection. So there's imperfections, plural. Okay? Fine. So therefore, this creation, ha'oimed b'shikul, it stands in this balance, bein hashleimus, between perfection and imperfections, which are the result of enlightenment, illumination, let's call it, illumination, and concealment, right? Illumination and concealment, right? We're going to be going into holiday of Purim next week, right? Which is Megillat Esther, right? What do they say about Megillat Esther? Megillat comes from the word megaleh, which means to reveal, and Esther comes from the word Hester, which means to conceal. So Megillat Esther is supposed to be the revelation of concealment, right, where God's hand is kind of concealed, but it's also at the same time it's revealed, right? So good. So he stands between the elements of perfection and imperfection, and which are the result of illumination and concealment. So if he strengthens himself in terms of element of perfection, him acquiring these things within himself, that's a way for him to grasp. Oiches means to grasp, to God, blessed be his name, because he is the root and the source for them. So in as much as he is able to increase in perfection, right? Kach hu marbe, so too he is able to increase ha'achiza, the grasping by his dapkus boy, and in the connection, right, in the clinging to God. Until that when he reaches the completion of acquiring these elements of perfection, he comes to the complete grasping by his dapkus and connecting and clinging, boy is baruch shmoy. Venimtza, so it comes out, mizdabek boy is baruch shmoy, that he will be then completely attached to him. Venene b'tuvoy, and then he will benefit from his goodness and enjoy his goodness. Umishtalim boy, and he will be perfected in him. Vehu atzmoy bal tuvoy ushleimusa, and he is also the master of that goodness, that in that perfection. Good. So far so good. Right. So even though, again, we have to, maybe I'm jumping ahead a little bit, even though we do understand that everything involves a certain, power steering, right? Meaning, right? Power steering means like, I push a little bit, right, and some mechanism magnifies my strength, right? So, I give a little charity, it's a small act of giving, it's nothing. It's nothing, Took a quarter, put it into pushka. Oh, wow, what is that? It's a small act, right? But power steering turns that small act into an expression of something like tremendous, of something huge that happened. This is a reenactment of giving, of kindness, of all of these various elements of perfection. And power steering intensifies that, a millionfold, 1,000, infinite-fold. We don't know exactly how the process works, right? But certainly, the more I press on that power steering mechanism, right, the more if I do a mitzvah with all my heart and all my soul and with every kavanah possible, with full intention and full being, with my internal and external capacities. So again, in the big scheme of things, okay, fine. So what did you accomplish? It's true, but the the power steering is magnified, and exponentially upon exponentially, exponentially, and so it allows me to then, of course, make a much greater connection. That okay, I was half asleep at Shacharis, I put a quarter into the tzedakah box. Okay, Dalet. Dalet. V'hinei, and now behold, l'sheyiyu b'mitzius ha'inyonim hashoinim ha'ele, so that there should be in existence various elements, right? Hashoinim means different, right? Various different elements, ha'ele, these shel shleimus, of perfection, v'chisoron, and imperfection, shezacharno, that we have mentioned, right? So that in other for this plan to work, there has to be many kinds of elements out there, so that I allow myself to perfect from, like a diamond being cut from all different sides. Okay? So then this bria, this creation that God created in order to bestow goodness upon this creation, has to be batchuna, has to be in a nature that, that's necessary for this thing. Perush, what does that mean? Be'afsharut, right? Be'afsharus, and with the ability, l'shnei ha'inyonim be'yecholos aleim, right? It has to have the ability and the capability to reach out in either direction. Okay? Shetikne hashleimus, that has to have the ability to acquire the perfection, v'te'oder min ha'chesroinus, and it has to distance, I don't know how to say distance, avoid, okay, let's say avoid the deficiency, the elements of deficiency. V'shimotzu lo ha'amtzoyim, and there also have to be intermediaries, l'dover hazeh, for this thing, right? So there has to be elements again of perfection and deficiency. There's me. There's elements of perfection and deficiency, and then there is the tools to acquire each one. Perush, what does that mean? Liknois zeh hashlemus, so I should be able to acquire this perfection. Hine vada sheprotim rabim v'shoinim tzorich shiyimtzu b'briya. So there has to be a lot of various elements, right? To reach perfection is not a one-time thing. It's not one act of tzedakah. It's not one act of restraint. It's not one act of davening with kavanah, right? It's a variety of. It's basically taking my whole existence and perfecting it from every aspect possible. So therefore there has to be many particulars and many types of things that should exist. And there has to be now many different interrelations between these elements that exist, so that this should, so that the purpose that this was created for would come to be. Okay. V'hinei. No, I'm saying v'ulam. I'm sorry. V'ulam. So, however, but still, or I don't know, v'ulam habriya, this creation that we've been speaking to until now, right? Hisatata, that is destined le'inyan hagodol hazeh, for this great thing, for this great mission. Hainu ladvekus, which is to connect, to cling to God. Is Baruch Shmoy, kamoish zacharnu. Hi tikore ha'ikoris shebechol abriya. This creation will be called the main one, the primary one in all of creation, right? Because it's for that bria that everything else came into existence, right? Correct? Right? Makes sense. And then as a result, anything else that exists, they're just technical aspects of creation in order to make this possible. The goal of creation was to have this other creation in order to bestow goodness upon. Everything else are just mechanisms to make this happen. So that thing, that other creation becomes the ikaris, the primary. Everything else will be just an assistant in some way, or in some aspect, to the to the total goal, the overriding goal. that it should succeed and be able to exist. So all other creations will be considered secondary, toffel, right? Not even secondary. Secondary is not such a great word. How do you say toffel? There's no good word for toffel. Toffel means something that is completely, is only, right? Its only existence is for the primary. It's more than just secondary. Secondary means there's a primary thing and then the secondary. Secondary is also important. It's just not as important as the primary. That's not what it means. Toffel means
supportive.
It's right. So supportive, right? Right. So okay. So meaning, what is he trying to allude to? Two things. He's trying to allude to what? Auxiliary, right? Auxiliary, right? So what is he trying to allude to? He's trying to allude to, first of all, it says Bereshis, right? What does Rashi say in Bereshis? Bishvil Yisrael shenikra Reishis, right? In the very word of Bereshis, Rashi is telling you what's the purpose of creation. Bishvil Yisrael shenikra Reishis, right? There is this other being that is going to be a receptacle. Okay, that's number one. Number two is he's trying to allude to you that there are many other creations that exist that seem to be much higher than the human being, like the angels and the spheres and whatever other beings that exist, right? But at the end of it all, it doesn't make a difference. If all of those other creations are all just a way for this whole enterprise to be put into action. And the entire enterprise was only that there should be another being upon whom to bestow goodness. Everything else is just a way to make it happen. Okay? So let's finish off. We're going to finish now. Habriya haikoris. So what is this primary creation? Be'emes hi hamin ha'enosh. In truth, that is the species of men, right? The human species. Right. So at this point, it doesn't say, like I just said, Bishvil Yisrael shenikra Reishis, that it already it's Jews. It's not. It's the human race. Right, because that's where it starts. It starts from Adam Arishon, and then it didn't necessarily mean Klal Yisrael. V'chol shara nivroim, and all the other creations, bein hashfolim, whether the lowly ones, bein hagvoim, or the lofty ones, right? Whether it's the cockroach on the floor or the highest malach, einam ela ba'avuroi, all of them were created for him, for the human being. Lahashlomas in Yonov, for perfection of his station. Lefi kol habechinois harabos, in all various aspects, v'ashonos, the different ones, haruuyos limotzi boy, that need to be found in them. Ukemoisha avayer oid, as I will explain in the future, lefnim is in the next in following chapters, b'siyat d'shmaya. V'hine hahaskolos. Now the summary. V'hine hahaskola, intellectualism. Right, that's number one. V'chol amidos toivos, and all good character traits. Heim inyone shleimus. These are elements of perfection. Okay, so enlightenment and self-improvement. Those are the key elements of perfection. Enlightenment and self-improvement. Okay, heim inyone shleimus shenimtzu liishtalim bohem ha'odam, that are made so that the person should be able to perfect himself with. V'inyone ha'chomer, what's the opposite of enlightenment? Is physicality. Ha'chomer means the word chomer really means like glina. It means right. It's the right. So, it's a good idea maybe to right. So I don't know if, so in the world of Maharal, in the world of other thinkers, in the world of really Greek thinkers, so there's two, in everything that exists, there's two. There is the chomer, which is the material, the clay from which something was made, and then there's the tsura, and that is the form that it was shaped, right? So the form is not something. The form is like I don't know, it's like a locus. I don't know, you're familiar with the locus, mathematical concept, locus? No? Whatever it is, let's say in your computer program, you're a programmer, right? Okay, whatever it is, you make you put in the formula, right? You put in the formula of how, I don't know, a picture has to come up on the screen, right? So the formula, so as the screen appears, certain pixels on the screen light up, and boom, there is a shape, right? So the formula is like the instructions for the shape to be created, right? Right? Out of what? Out of pixels on the screen, right? The pixel on the screen themselves, they are not anything, but since you only told very specific ones to light up, so those specific pixels create a form, a tzura, a shape. So the formula, which is not a tangible thing, it's just an instructions. The formula, which is just an instruction, right? So that formula creates the shape of this item, and the chomer, which is the substance, the material out of which it was made. So everything that exists has these two things coming together: the chomer and the tzura. There's no chomer without the tzura, and there's no tzura without the chomer. They can't really be separated, but at the same time, we understand that those two things kind of can be in our mind. We can separate them as separate concepts, right? Even though, like supply and demand, right? So in economics, right? We know that if there's supply, there has to be demand. Otherwise, no, there's no exchange, right? So supply and demand means that there's two parties coming together, right? So over here also, so chomer and tzura exist in every item. So here is my coffee cup, right? So it's made, styrofoam is the chomer, and the cup is the tzura, right? So what is he saying? So he's saying is that, so haskalah, or enlightenment, haskalah, it's like the formula, because these are instructions. They are abstract again. So these are abstract things. They're not in the chomer. They're just like kind of behind the scenes concepts that tell the chomer to shape up in a certain way, right? So that's haskalah. That's enlightenment. Enlightenment are elements of abstraction that don't exist in the real world. They're just ideas and concepts, right? And so the opposite of that is the disenlightenment is, becoming material, shapeless, pointless, and kind of useless. Because styrofoam by itself is nothing. It's just right. It's nothing. So good. So that's what he's saying. So the main elements of perfection is haskalah, is enlightenment, and midas tovos, and good midas. The main elements of imperfection is being this chomri, is being the physical. What makes you physical? What makes you physical? Again, what makes you physical is being without reason, without thought, without instruction, without, right, just becoming instinctive, right? When a person is instinctive, he's acting not out of intellect, not out of instruction, but out of chomrius, right? So taiva, things that are right, that are desire, things of desire, those things are an expression of a person's chomrius. They're an expression of just a person's instinctive nature, not his instructive nature, right? So vinyone chomer, so elements of chomer, of this, again, I don't know what he calls it. He calls it material. He just calls it material. Okay, so the elements of materialism, or midas haroyos, and negative traits, heimin achisorin. Those are the elements of deficiency. Shezacharnu, shehaodam musam beineim. In between of these, the person is placed. Liknois loy hashlemus, to acquire for him perfection. Right. So a person, in every kind of second of his life, right, and this doesn't require anything really. It's more, the things that he's talking about are internal acquisitions, not necessarily external acquisitions. So everything we have, everything we need, to acquire perfection is given to us. It's within us, right? It's within us. There's the haskalah, there's the enlightenment, and then there is the good midas. Or we can go in the other direction, is the instinctive life and completely unenlightened instinctive life that causes an expression of bad midas. I get angry, that's my instinct working, right? It's my instinct working. It's me moving away from perfection towards material chomrius. Good. Okay. So good. So that concludes chapter 2, right? So that gives us. So first chapter was about God. Second chapter talked about why the creation was created, and we came to the conclusion that the creation was created for mankind, in order that mankind should have a platform to acquire his own perfection, in order to receive the ultimate good that God wanted to give it. So now we're going to get more specifically about the nature of this humankind that was created. Let's see, should we start now or should we end here? Okay, probably we should stop here. I'm gonna say this is a good place to stop.